Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. So, by the title of this video, which I have no idea what it is as I'm filming this, but maybe as I'm filming this I'll come across the title. But anyways, by the title of this video that is unknown to me right now, this might be kind of a I don't want to say like personal opinion. I mean, I guess it is, but very confusing. Let me explain. So, I'm gonna actually throw this question out, so feel free to comment below. Do you guys ever feel like mental health is compared between people? Very complex question. Let me explain. So, I don't know, I kind of feel like sometimes mental health seems to be like a competition. Certain people have made it out to be that way, which I don't understand, okay? I don't get where that's coming from, like where, somebody might be battling depression and they're like, oh, feels like we feel sorry for you, but then somebody says, oh yeah, I have depression and anxiety, and they kind of like oh my god, and then they like throw all the like resources and like support into that person just because it seems more severe than another person, which I don't understand why, because like everybody's mental health is different and every diagnosis is different. It's not the same. So it's like, how can you compare and kind of like shut out somebody else just because their mental health doesn't seem like that important or that serious compared to somebody else that has more titles or just seems to be dealing with it in a different way. Like some people can seem all together and then some people not, or like some people on medication and some aren't. And it's like it always feels like it's a competition. And it kind of feels, you know, exhausting to kind of be like, oh yeah, like once eventually whatever you get onto that topic and you explain all this, and then somebody's like, well, I know somebody that has this and this, you'll be fine. And it's just like, okay, like that's just not the point. Like I just wanted, like we were having a serious conversation. I don't want to feel like a lesser person or like my shit's not important just because, somebody doesn't think it's important or severe. And I might get a lot of hate for this, and I understand that. But I feel like this is kind of like a topic that needs to be talked about, like that mental health needs to not be compared. And it's I don't know, it's like that aspect of like, oh, there seems to be like a competition on it. And then there's the other side of it where people don't want to learn about it. You know, um so I'm just going to throw in like a personal thing here. There are certain people in my life that don't understand mental health. They don't get depression, they don't get anxiety, they don't get PTSD. And to them, it just seems like you need to kind of like suck it up, or like, kind of shove it. Like back in my day, we didn't have all of this. And, if you were thrown back in my day, you probably wouldn't survive, that type of thing. Because of your mental health or whatever. And it can be very exhausting, right? So it's like, there's this big like stigma going around, like, oh, people don't talk about it. But the whole thing is like, well, why doesn't people talk about it? Some do the whole competition thing and comparing, where the other thing is like, you don't want to learn about it. It's just like, I get like, well, I don't understand where you get all of this stuff. You had a good, happy childhood. I mean, that's true. I did. But there were certain events in my life that led to a, mental health situation. um, and, granted, for me, it took me a hot minute to admit that there was something wrong and to reach out and get help. I mean, that's just like something I had to learn and accept. So, I do get why, certain people don't understand or want to understand is because, just the generation or the way that they were brought up, it's just that, it wasn't talked about, it was, people just didn't have, I don't want to say they didn't have it, which is not true. I mean, mental health has been around forever. It's just that it wasn't as, I guess, talked about, of course, or what's the word am I looking for? Like, it wasn't something you sat down and be like, oh, something's wrong. It wasn't basically like pointed out to them, right? It was all kind of like internally they had to carry it themselves and stuff, and they had to deal with all of that. So that's like two sides. And then there's the other side of people that have mental health, and that it's just like, well, my mental health is more important than yours, and it's like it can be very frustrating and exhausting, talking to somebody that has mental health that isn't really exactly open or supportive. It's like, again, they sit on their kind of like idea of like, my mental health is worse than yours, so you just have to suck it up and you don't have to talk about it. I have somebody in my life that is like that sometimes, and it can be very frustrating where you just have to take the step back and not, take a break from talking with them, because it's just like, well, their mental health is more important than, mine. And it's just like, I'm not trying to compete with anybody. I know everybody deals with something differently. Like, I'm that type of person that understands that there are different situations. People handle things in many different situations. But I also don't have to be degraded, right? And again, like, it's just like, and then you're kind of like also in this video is going in many different directions, because it is kind of like a spider web, where it's just like, they don't want to deal with anything of the mental health. They got the medication and they think that everything, whatever, that they don't have to deal with anything. And, when they come to you and ask like for advice, or, like just somebody to talk to, or like an opinion, and you kind of give your opinion because they asked for it, and then they bite your head off and make you feel lesser than a human being, because they could be in the middle of an episode, or they're just pissed off, or they didn't like the opinion that you had even though they asked you for an opinion. And it's like, you kind of have to walk on eggshells with that person sometimes, because you have no idea like in what capacity that you can talk to them in, right? Because they have treated you like complete crap in the past, so it's like you don't know how to talk to this person. And it's like they kind of bring it out as a competition, so that goes back to like comparing and making mental health as a comparing, like, oh, I have this and this, and you only have this, so like your stuff doesn't matter, my stuff's more important. And it's just like, I don't understand why it's turned into like a big competition or comparing, because every human being's different. Every human handles things differently and goes through life differently and has different paths. And I just never fully understand that, of like, why do we have to compete? Like, mental health should not be a competition, people. Like, it just makes me so uncomfortable. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm completely, on acid or like whatever, and I don't know when I'm like, maybe I'm overthinking this, but like I see it all the time, especially like in the news or talking to people, or like just observing situations. It's just like the language that people use, and it's just like, it's like they want us to talk about mental health, but then they turn it into this whole big cluster of confusion and, degrading. And, and then, you get the people that, see that, right? So they think that it's okay behavior to be like, well, hey, I was told my mental health was more important than yours, type of thing, right? So it's like, it's cause and effect, right? So people see this and they see this behavior and all that, and they think it's okay, so they put it forth in their life, and the circle just continues, right? It doesn't get fixed. And, those people that, like, take a step back and be like, hey, whoa, right? They get shit upon or, run over because that's not how you're supposed to be. Like, life's always supposed to be a competition, which is so stupid and, like, exhausting in itself. And, and then you get the people that don't want to learn about it because they think it's a bunch of hogwash. And it's, it's just like, well, how is people ever supposed to heal or talk about what they went through or what they're dealing with if, you're going to be kind of closed-minded? Like, I get it. I mean, there are generations that mental health wasn't talked about. It wasn't a thing, even though it was a thing. Like I said before, like, it was dealt quietly. And it wasn't loudly broadcast, right? And I mean, again, there are certain generations that, not that they had an easier time, I'm not saying that all generations had their issues, it's just that they didn't have the shit that we're dealing with, and we didn't have the shit that they dealt with. So again, mental health is very different in many different generations, especially generations, I'm going to say that. And it's just a lot to kind of go through. And, like, if the older generations don't want to talk about it, or, like, not to say that all of them had mental health problems, I'm not saying that, I'm just saying, like, if, they don't want to talk about it or talk about what they dealt with, or even if they don't have any mental health problems, right, talking about certain things and whatnot. Again, it's cause and effect. So it's just like, well, going back to the whole point of if somebody, is from an older generation, I'm not saying like super old, but I'm like saying in their 40s or 50s, and, they have been raised to, we don't talk about it, it's there, but we don't really talk about it. And that's only like a 20 to 30 year difference between me and them, right? I'm not saying all, I'm just saying certain situations that I've been in and they've been older. It's just like, well, my shit's more important than yours, and you don't get to talk about your shit, right? And it's just like, really? And it's like they act like the whole higher power of, like, my shit's more important than yours, and they don't want to hear about it. It's always about them, and not like a we type thing, it's like, it's not a balanced situation where it's like, you can have an open communication. Or, it's just that the thing that I hear from, like, older people, again, not that old, like, I would say 50s and 60s, a little bit older than that, but mostly that, it's just like, well, I don't understand it. And then it's like, well, you try to, like, have that open conversation, right? And it's just like, people should just get over it and suck it up and move on, like, and it's like, you get a little bit timid. But then it gets a little bit more complicated, where it's like, you as a person try to talk about it, and they have that same comeback as like, you should just suck it up and move on and blah blah blah. And then you see they react differently, completely different, from a person that's younger than them, but like older than you, and they're dealing with mental health, and they are perfectly understanding for that person. They want to be there for that person. They check in on that person, you know. They worry about that person. And then it's like you're kind of sitting there going like, why can't I have that, right? And it gets very confusing in that aspect of like, well, why are you supportive to them but not supportive to me? And it's like, well, is there something wrong with me? Like, and all those questions get, locked in your head and lost and stuff. And it's like they try to be so understanding to that person. And then it's just like, but, you don't want to do that for me. You're just telling me to suck it up and get over it and move on. And it's just like, it's very confusing. Like, you want to understand, but then, like, you don't understand at all, right? Like, it's a very interesting thing. And then it's like you kind of have that like guilt feeling of like, well, if you're having a really shitty day and it's like you really want somebody to care about you, but you know that it's like you feel like you have to fight for attention, right? And like I've had that feeling cross my mind, like in my head a few times. I'm like, oh my god, my shoulder, sorry. Feelings of like that, like, I want attention type of thing, like I need help. Like, it's like you don't want to be like an attention seeking person, but it's just like, you want to be kind of selfish and be like, well, I want what that person has, what you're giving that person, but you won't give me. And it's just, I don't want to be that person, right? That's attention seeking behavior. So like, what I do is I just get quiet and I do my own thing, and it's hard. It's a balance, because I mean, when you get to that point of like, my foot's asleep. When you get to that point of like you're seeing that, it's like that kind of like, not the competition, kind of like you want to compete for attention type of thing. And so it just goes back to all that cause and effect. Like, is mental health becoming a competition? And if so, why? Like, I don't understand it. Like, it is a very complex situation with many different layers and many different reasons why people handle it differently for those who are battling mental health and for those who aren't, Again, not saying that, there's like, God, it's just like everybody deals with it differently for those who are battling it and those who aren't, per se. And it's like how everybody deals with it differently. And it's like you have to find that balance, especially for yourself. That is something I have learned, is that I have to do what's right for me. And yes, that might piss off some people, but like my mental health and my stability and like what I want and need, it comes first for me, right? And that might piss off some people. And I fully understand that and respect that. I get that. But again, like, I have to do what's best for me, right? And that might look different to some people and be like, oh, well, you've changed, your behavior. You went like this, like, 6 months ago. Well, bitch, I learned, like, like, I have to do what's best for me. And it's scary. And I honestly 100% don't always do it, guys. This is kind of turned off into a ramble, but we'll get there. Of like, I don't always do that, and some days I do feel selfish, right? And some days I do feel pissed off and wonder why, that person's getting special attention and understanding, whereas like I don't. I do get that selfish, and not that I want to compete or anything. It's just like, it's sad, right? Um, it's just, I don't know. This video is kind of a little bit of a ramble, guys, because, like, this has been on my mind, and I don't know if I explained it in the best way, so, you know, I might not redo this video, but, like, expand on it. Because, again, like, I talked about, like, 7 different paths here, and 7 different situations, and, you know, guys, let me know, like, what area you want me to go, like, separate in, and do, like, a separate video on, and I will. I mean, again, I am not a professional, guys. This is just mostly my opinion, you know, what I've heard and learned. Again, will probably not agree with anybody, but again, please have that open mind and have, like, you know, that an open conversation instead of just being like, you're wrong, or whatever. You know, have that open-mindedness of people's opinions can be different and vary, right? And again, you're not always gonna agree on shit. That's just life. Anyways, guys, I'm gonna leave it there. Just remember, be nice to everybody, or try to be. Never give up, always keep fighting. You're enough, and you're very much loved. And until the next video, guys, stay safe, and sending my love.